Hello there and welcome to World News, coming to you live on All 24 News from Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Zachary. Coming up next are the headlines. Turkey earthquake rescuers find miracle survivors, but frustration grows as death toll rises to more than 37,000 deaths. Also coming up, Palestinian Prime Minister calls on international community to boycott Zionist entities' government as they dangerously escalate violence against Palestinians. Bakhmut comes under heavy shelling and NATO Stoltenberg says there is no sign of peace by Putin. And we will get to the story behind UFOs that US fighter jets shut down later in our news. Hello again and welcome to the program. First, in our Turkey-Syria earthquake file, with chances of finding more survivors growing more remote, the toll in both countries from Monday's earthquake and major aftershocks rose above 37,000 and looked set to keep growing. The UN has announced lately that rescue operations are coming to an end after a whole week of search, as countries are looking forward to rebuilding the collapsed constructions as soon as possible for the desperate survivors who are still with no shelters. Scenes of survivors being pulled from under debris are becoming rare as the number of dead climbs relentlessly. The earthquake has left hundreds of thousands of people homeless in 10 provinces across the southeastern region of Turkey, with many sleeping in tents and cars in freezing temperatures. Osama Ayadi with more details.
Rescuers raced against time to find more survivors under the rubble for the past week since the strike of the 7.8 earthquake in southern Turkey and northern Syria. Authorities also sought to maintain order across the disaster zone and began legal action over building collapses.
Good or bad, everything we had was here. Even my children are crying now. They're saying, "Mom, everything is gone. Our childhood is gone. Our memories are all gone."
Frustrated and homeless survivors in Turkey's quake-hit Adıyaman confirmed that their conditions were rapidly deteriorating. Concerns about hygiene and the spread of infection in the region is growing. Thus, Turkey's health ministry has sent rabies and tetanus vaccines to the hit zones, in addition to mobile pharmacies which had started to operate there.
This is the 8th day. One should never give up, but I don't think there will be rescues personally. From now on, we want homes. Our homes are destroyed. We want help, or else they can build us a home or give us the money to buy one.
Despite disparity over finding new potential survivors under the overwhelming rubble, rescue teams attempted their last chance to wrap up their searching and rescuing operations, which resulted in the rescue of 7 people, including babies.
I was told Karam, Noor, and their mother were under the rubble. We kept searching for 2 days to get them out. According to Lebanese forensic doctor, Karam died on the 2nd day because the blood on his face was fresh. I'm so sad.
With chances of finding more survivors growing more remote, the toll in both countries from Monday's earthquake and major aftershocks rose about 33,000 and looked set up to keep growing. It was the deadliest quake in Turkey since 1939. Satellite images from Turkish Defense Ministry show the extent of the quake destruction in the cities of Kahramanmaraş and Hatay, and the situation in Syria does not seem to be any better.
In related news, during a visit to Damascus in which he met Syrian Foreign Minister Faisal Maqdad, UN Syria envoy Geir Pedersen said the United Nations was mobilizing funding to support Syria. The UN is hoping to ramp up cross-border operations by opening an additional 2 border points between Turkey and Syria for aid deliveries. Several Arab countries have provided support to Assad in the quake's aftermath.
The United Nations will do whatever we can to support the Syrian people in this crisis. We also emphasized the need to work in all areas of Syria, and I was pleased to hear reassurances from the Syrian government that they will support us in the work that we are doing all over Syria. Of course, as you all know, there has been a particular challenge immediately after the earthquake struck to get support into the northwest.
In Syria still, aid supplies from Arab and other countries are still arriving to Syria 1 week after the major earthquake that struck the country and neighboring Turkey. Donations from the UN, Algeria, Russia, among other countries, were being unloaded in Aleppo airport. Zara Farjani has more.
The world is mobilized to provide all the necessary help to the damaged regions in Syria following the devastating earthquake that hit the north of the country. 1 week after the deadly incident, Aleppo airport still receives Arab aid from the MENA region, including Algeria, Palestine and Egypt, who managed to donate over 200 tons of necessary supplies consisting of medicine, food, blankets and clothes.
Algeria sent more than 100 tons to our Syrian brothers. There are supplies that we talked to the Syrian authorities and the Syrian Red Crescent about, such as infant formula, diapers, blankets, clothes, tents, as well as some necessary medicines.
Campaigns have been launched from the city of Al-Quds to provide relief to our afflicted Syrian refugee brothers. From here, from Al-Quds, it is the message of victory to our brothers in Levant.
There are about 19 tons of donations of all necessities, like food, drink, clothes for children, blankets, everything. Everyone donated, from simple employees to the largest companies in Egypt.
At the international level, Russia and China donated relief supplies to Syrian quake-hit areas, while major world organizations try to deliver humanitarian aid to regions outside government-controlled areas. The United Nations, for its part, switched its urgency to providing shelter, food, schooling and psychological care to those affected.
The rescue phase is dragging live people out from the rubble and finding those who died in the rubble. That's coming to a close. And now the humanitarian phase, the urgency of providing shelter, psychosocial care, food, schooling, and a sense of the future for these people. That's our obligation now.
With chances of finding more survivors growing more remote, the toll in Syria from Monday's quake rose to over 5,000, and the number still seems likely to increase given the massive scale of destruction.
Algerian civil defense team returned to Algiers on Monday after the end of the search and rescue operation following the devastating earthquake that struck Syria. The team was received by widespread praise for the efforts they have made throughout the presence in this country. Earlier, the governor of Aleppo had honored the Algerian rescue team officials after the completion of their operation. It presented the Algerian civil defense team with the Shield of Aleppo in appreciation of their efforts in Syria. To a different story now. The Zionist occupation forces and settlers launched 167 new attacks through the Palestinian regions within a week, that is. According to reports, 9 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank. The Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shatia, for his part, called on the international community to boycott the Zionist entity government as an occupying power. In another context, he thanked Arab states' response to the call of Al-Quds by holding a special conference bearing the name of the Holy Aqsa Mosque.
The extremist Israeli government isolated efforts to legitimize 9 illegal settlement enterprise as a first stage, and it is the time for the world to punish Israel for its gross contempt of UN resolution and the international community's repeated warnings. The state of Palestine reiterates that Israel, as an occupying power, has no sovereignty over any part of the state of Palestine. We thank our Arab brothers who responded to the call of Al-Quds by holding a special conference bearing the name of it, and mobilizing support for the Palestinian cause and for the occupied city of Al-Quds, which is being subjected to attempts of the worst types of repression and the violation of sanctity, of Islamic and Christian sanctities in it. We also look forward to providing aid and assistance to our people in the Holy City to face the challenges of evicted of its residents and facing the repeated aggression against the Holy Aqsa Mosque.
Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received on Monday the ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Hossein Mashelji-Zadeh, who is on a farewell visit on the occasion of the end of his duties in Algeria. After the reception, the Iranian ambassador stated that his meeting with the Algerian president allowed to discuss the development of areas of cooperation between Algeria and Iran. He also expressed his thanks and gratitude to both the President of the Republic and the Algerian people.
I met today with His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune through a farewell visit after the end of my mission here in Algeria as an ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I conveyed to Mr. President the greetings of the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, and we discussed the development of cooperation between Algeria and Iran. I also expressed my thanks and gratitude for the facilities I received during the period I served here in Algeria by the Algerian people and officials.
In a different story, Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Mtala Mamra is on a working visit to Pretoria as part of the periodic political consultations between Algeria and South Africa in preparation for the upcoming bilateral events. Mr. Lamamra held bilateral talks on Monday with Minister Pandor, after which they expanded to include the delegations of the two sides, where they reviewed the strong and distinguished historical relations between the two countries in preparation for the 7th session of the Higher Joint Committee in Algeria under the presidency of the leadership or the leaders of the two countries, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who will soon pay a state visit to Algeria. Algeria on Monday commemorates the 63rd anniversary of the first French nuclear explosions in Regan, the southern city of Adrar. This heinous crime constitutes a deliberate state crime against the Algerian people and humanity. The nuclear explosions were carried out by France in full knowledge of the dangers of this weapon, whose effects are still harming generations to come.
The French nuclear explosions on Algerian soil were not equal to any explosion on Earth.
The French nuclear explosions in Regan were 7 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. These nuclear bombs were tested on real human body corpses after they have killed them.
To neighboring Tunisia, where Tunisians are expressing their satisfaction with the facilities applied at the border crossings to enter Algeria after the recent measures taken by President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, aimed at giving more flexibility in the movement of transit to and from Algeria.
We are in good spirits. Algeria and Tunisia are one nation, and we are not experiencing any difficulties. These most recent measures are perfect. They are treating us admirably. They are delighted by our visit and constantly ensure that there won't be any issues between us.
To the field of maritime travel between Libya and Tunisia, the step constitutes the launch of the first sea line for travelers linking a Shab station in Tripoli to the Gergis region in southern Tunisia, provided that the step will be followed by the opening of another line to Sfakas and another one to Halaq al-Wad in Tunis 2011 years ago. Libya was Tunisia's first economic partner on the Maghreb and Arab levels, and the volume of trade exchanges between the two countries reached about $2 billion at the time. The Belgian judiciary issued international arrest warrants against several Moroccan officials involved in Morocco-Gate scandal. Brussels and Paris handed arrest warrants against several Moroccan officials for their involvement in the corruption case that affected European bodies led by the head of the Moroccan Directorate General for Studies and Documentation, Yassine Mansouri. to Russia-Ukraine file now. With the approaching of the anniversary of the starting of the Russian military operation in Ukraine, NATO says that the situation in Bakhmut became even more acute and Russia is not showing any sign for peace. More details with Sofian Kinturi.
A day after Sunday's announcement of the co-founder of Russia's Wagner Group that promised to capture Bakhmut as soon as possible, Russian Defense Ministry said its forces had been taken Krasnoura, which is considered a scene of fierce fighting between Russia and Ukraine lately.
On the Donetsk axis, the assault detachment volunteers, with fire support from the rocket troops and artillery from the South troops, liberated the settlement of Krasnohora of the Donetsk People's Republic. Enemy losses per day amounted to over 100 for the Ukrainian servicemen, 4 armored combat vehicles, 6 pickup trucks, and 2 D-30 howitzers.
Bakhmut is a major objective for Russia. Months of Russian shelling have already left much of its range. Most of the civilian infrastructure has been hit by shelling and stopped functioning, while the local government encouraged residents to leave the city.
10 месяцев, да?
For what should I leave? Well, I live in a dormitory here, which is completely destroyed. Only my room is left intact.
Situation in Bakhmut became even more acute. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told reporters that the feared new major Russian offensive in Ukraine has started as the anniversary of the war neared.
Well, I think the reality is that we have seen the start already. Because we've seen what Russia does now, President Putin do now, is to send in thousands of more troops, accepting a very high rate of casualty. The most important message is that we see no sign whatsoever that President Putin is preparing for peace.
In order to counter the offensive and retake lost territory, the West was at odds just a few days ago to provide Ukraine fighter jets and long-range missiles. Now, however, the defense ministers of several NATO allied to Kiev will meet in Brussels on Tuesday to discuss potential future military assistance.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock on Monday called on Turkey and Hungary to pave the way for Finland and Sweden to join NATO, stating she expects all NATO members to ratify their bids to join the defense alliance. Without delay, that is. Finland and Sweden wanted to join hand in hand, but while most member states have given the applications the green light, Turkey and Hungary are yet to ratify them.
At the NATO summit in Madrid last summer, we have laid the foundation for your accession together. And of course, we expect all NATO members to swiftly implement this decision without delay. And to make it clear once more, Finland and Sweden fulfill the criteria we have agreed upon together as NATO members in Madrid.
Kosovo will on Friday mark the 15th anniversary of its declaration of independence from Serbia. Intense Western diplomacy halted a feared slide back into armed conflict. Although the strife has abated, there are a lot of armed men around and tempers are short. Let's discover this story with Selma Nasib.
After Kosovo declared independence 15 years ago, 50,000 minority Serbs in the north refused to recognize state institutions or any form of benefits from Serbia's budget, nor do they want to pay any taxes, either to Pristina or Belgrade. When state authorities cracked down on cross-border smuggling by building a border, police base and acted to have Serbs switch their car registrations from Serbia to Kosovo, tensions and violence increased. And this made the economy of the country at risk.
International companies that were supposed to arrive for the first time in Kosovo told us they were delayed in opening shops due to the unstable situation. This meant for them that Kosovo is a dangerous region.
More and more citizens got concerned about the unrest in the country and have urged the government to find a lasting solution.
I have to say I'm more worried than I have been in many years about the threat, the risk of deadly conflict in northern Kosovo, which could then actually spill into reprisal attacks on Serbs in south of Kosovo. Could also see attacks on the Albanian minority in northern Kosovo. There are a lot of armed men up there, and tempers are short. I'm worried.
Intense Western diplomacy halted a feared slide back into armed conflict in the run-up to the 15th anniversary of ethnic Albanian majority Kosovo's independence from Serbia. After years of inconclusive EU-mediated negotiations, US and EU envoys managed to prod Serbian and Kosovo leaders to sign normalization plan.
We remain convinced that the plan we presented in September and we discussed today is the best way for normalization of relations between Serbia and Kosovo and for European integration of the region.
Kurti said yes to the EU plan, which he called a good basis for further discussion and solid platform for moving forward Kosovo's relations with Serbia. However, 15 years after it declared independence, ties remain fraught with tension, with Belgrade still not recognizing the statehood of its former province.
To another headline story, U.S. fighter jets shot down an object over Lake Huron on Sunday. The fourth such downing over the U.S. or Canada this month. Chinese Foreign Ministry said it has no information about this matter. It added that U.S. balloons has flown in China's airspace more than 10 times in the beginning of 2022. Islam Sid reports.
More unidentified object had been shot down in the airspace over the United States and Canada in the past few days. The incident raised many questions over the essence of these flying objects, or who might be behind sending them to the sky. According to the White House, the United States has not yet been able to identify the recent down objects. However, they were not assessed as a threat to people on the ground.
We do not assess that these most recent objects posed any direct threat to people on the ground, and we are laser focused on confirming their nature and purpose, including through intensive efforts to collect debris in the remote locations where they have fallen.
U.S. fighter jets shot down an octagonal object over Lake Huron. It was the fourth flying object to be shot down over North America since the U.S. accused China of sending surveillance balloon over its lands. On the other hand, China said it does not have any information on the flying objects, adding that U.S. high-altitude balloons had flown over its airspace more than 10 times yesteryear and without permission. These accusations have been refuted by the White House later on.
As for the other so-called unidentified flying objects that you mentioned, I have no understanding of this. If we have no obvious proof, then we shouldn't be making irresponsible remarks. We are also resolutely opposed to spouting lies to smear China. The illegal intrusion of airspace of other countries by U.S. balloons is also commonplace. Just since last year, the U.S.'s high-altitude balloons illegally entered Chinese airspace more than 10 times without the approval of the relevant Chinese authorities.
We are not flying surveillance balloons over China. I'm not aware of any other craft that we're flying over into Chinese airspace.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to meet with top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi at the Munich Security Conference, which would be their first face-to-face talks. Blinken had postponed his visit to Beijing following the balloon saga that defeated relations between the two countries.
Colombia's government and the National Liberation Army rebel group resumed peace talks in Mexico City on Monday after a temporary halt caused by a misunderstanding over suggested ceasefire. On New Year's Eve, President Gustavo Petro had announced that a ceasefire had been agreed with the ELN, but a few days later, the ELN said it was merely a proposal that had not been agreed to. Therefore, on Monday, leaders of the negotiations on both sides said the talks would focus on bilateral ceasefire and agreements to get humanitarian aid to areas of Colombia. And for more news making headlines around the globe, here is the news in brief.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi set out ambitions to more than triple annual defense exports to $5 billion over the next 2 years, as arms firms flock to a major air show for a slice of the nation's massive import budget.
The Philippines on Monday accused a Chinese Coast Guard ship of hitting a Philippine Coast Guard vessel with a military-grade laser and temporarily blinding some of its crew in the South China Sea. Meanwhile, Beijing said that its Coast Guard conducted actions according to law.
Empty shelves were seen in Auckland supermarket on Saturday as local residents braced themselves for Cyclone Gabrielle to make landfall. The cyclone is the second significant weather event to hit Auckland, is getting close to the coast over the next 24 hours. Therefore, residents in the surrounding area were told on Monday to brace for more heavy rain, flooding, and gale force winds.
As Cameroon's president prepares to celebrate his 90th birthday, the country's youth parade around the country to mark the 75th National Youth Day, a national holiday meant to highlight their significance in the development of the country.
Well, that's the end of our program. For more, visit our social media platforms. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.